brought you here?
Good question, actually, and one that is probably not easy to answer, but I'll give it my shot at being quite succinct. I turned vegetarian when I was age 6, and that was really through seeing a pamphlet that had come through the door from PETA, the charity, and that was all about animal farming. And I remember that, and it was like a bright neon leaflet. And from that point onwards, after reading the leaflet back to front and actually making that connection that animals equal food, etc., I decided to say to my parents, you know, I am not going to eat any of this meat if it's animals, because I love animals too much. So a 6-year-old saying that to parents was met with a lot of, okay, it's just a fad, you know, she'll grow out of it. And they continued to feed me meat, etc. But obviously, after a week of me not eating any of the meat, they realised, okay, she's going to be particularly strong with this, so we need to go out and find alternatives. So fast forward all the way throughout school, where, you know, people might have remembered me as a little bit of a vegan hippie, or you know, kind of a vegetarian hippie actually at the time, because I hadn't gone vegan. I went through school and college wanting to become vegan, but just waiting, because I've always been sporty, waiting for there to be enough products on the market that were going to allow me to nutritionally kind of be okay with that journey. So in 2003, just after I finished university, I turned vegan. Self-confessed, I was pretty much there for many years, because I never ate cheese. And I didn't have butter, and I didn't really have eggs. It was just things that had them in other products, like cake, for instance, and, you know, ice cream and stuff. So it wasn't that hard for me to make that change, to be honest. It wasn't a major transition for me. So yeah, I've been vegetarian since 6, and I'm vegan for 18 years now.
Wow, incredible. So I'm fascinated by this 6-year-old having this kind of protest, if you like, at home. so was it it's brilliant. So was it literally a week, and then they were kind of like, she's not going to give in here, we better start figuring it out?
Yeah, so for the first few days, I was just eating around the meat and leaving it on the plate, and then they would kind of give me more vegetables, thinking, well, just give us some more vegetables. And then at the end of the week, my mum was like, right, we need to go to the supermarket, and we need to identify what you can actually have. Now, back in 1987, there wasn't really a great deal on the market. Okay, Linda McCartney and things like that were on the market, but there wasn't a great deal of choice, you know, not like today where we really don't struggle for anything. So my staple food of choice for many years growing up as a child was bird's eye vegetable fingers. Because it was one of the only things that you could actually get, and something that I enjoyed. And then as I got a little bit older and my palate changed, then, you know, I tried out things like vegetarian burgers and vegetarian sausages and things like that. But it was a lot harder back then. And also I would say it was probably a little bit more carb driven back then, because I remember sometimes if it was out and about, things that I'd have to survive on would just be pasta or cornflakes or whatever it is. You know, it was almost like emergency foods. Whereas today, you know, you can go even to your local garage, your petrol store, and you can probably get a vegan sandwich and a vegan cupcake. It's crazy. So yeah, I think it was much more carb driven back in those early days. But I mean, I was always a very strong-willed child. I mean, I remember standing up in English literature when I was 6, doing a poem about blood sports. Wow. You know, I remember going on marches when I was very young with my older sister, and being, you know, emotionally rocked by what we saw. And I think that I've just always loved animals, and as far back as I can remember those connections, I've just wanted to do anything that I can to limit the harm that I would ever cause to any animal. Yeah.
You mentioned that the sport came in quite early. At what point were you kind of aware of the nutritional side of sport? So, you know, I know from personal experience, when I was a kid, like I loved playing sport, but I didn't necessarily think about what I needed to eat to do it. I just, if I was hungry, I just ate whatever and just ate more if I was more hungry. But that was probably just me. At what point did you start to become nutritionally aware? And was there any concern in you early that, you know, yes, I want to do this ethically, but, you know, everyone in the sort of mainstream is telling me that I need to eat X, Y, or Z animal product in order to be a competitive athlete? Yeah.
Well, in school and college, strangely enough, I wasn't all that sporty because we had I was brought up in a quite strict grammar school, so we had things like netball and hockey to have to deal with, which I didn't like either, to be honest. And athletics wasn't on our agenda, sadly. So I was more of a gym bunny in those days, where I just did my own fitness DVDs and things like that. But then going to university and battling with a little bit of stress and anxiety around exam time, it was at that time that I really thought, you know what, I'm going to start doing some more functional stuff, and I'm going to start doing some running and some cycling and things like that. And then obviously, you know, a couple of the first races that I ran in, I was featuring quite high up the table, unaffiliated, and then was approached by a local coach to join that club. But with regards to being nutritionally aware, I think I was aware from the very first day I started running, because you need energy to run, and you also need the right foods to recover after a run as well. And I'm quite meticulous on kind of organising life. So for me, it was just about researching, well, what are the food groups that I need to be dealing with? I mean, back then we didn't have MyFitnessPal, but I use it religiously today to track my macros. But it was just really reading magazines, reading journals, keeping up to date with all the latest findings, and just getting as many substitutes for things in. And even then, you know, okay, we didn't have social media as much as what it is today, but we could get on the internet and actually Google vegan recipes and things like that, and Google, you know, nutritionally balanced meals, which I did a lot of in the early days to really kind of learn the trade, so to speak.
Was there any skepticism within the sort of, you know, as you started to get coached, you started to sort of touch upon the kind of the world of professional sport? Was there any skepticism from those folks in that kind of, you know, those mainstream kind of views, or was everyone pretty open to what you were doing?
I'd say it was a mixed bag, really. I mean, there was a lot of people that were inquisitive, because I think that I can come over quite passionate and driven and focused, particularly on the subject of veganism, and I think that can be sometimes quite inspiring and spark curiosity. But I would say in the older generations of coaches, the 60 plus in age, back in sort of, you know, mid thousands, mid noughties, I think that there was a little bit more, let's say, a lack of understanding, and very much a few comments over the years, like, you know, you look like you could do with a good meat pie, and, you know, those kind of things that we've all gone through over and over again. But I think that they tended to tail off after the first few years, because I think people could see and potentially admire how strong I was with my character and how I responded to those things, and just how passionate I was about the animal rights movement. But I would definitely say, if I was going to cast an observation on it, that the older generation was lacking in understanding and empathy versus the younger generation. Even looking back to, bless them, my grandparents that are no longer with me, they couldn't get their head around it at all. It was very strange. They couldn't understand it, but, you know, they're from a completely different generation, and now we're in a generation where people are raising more vegan babies than ever, you know, and people sort of 18 right up to 40 are really leading the way with regards to ethical consumerism.
Yeah. Was it a driver for you at all, like from an athletic point of view, insofar as thinking, I don't ever want anybody to criticize my diet, my ethics, ultimately, as, you know, the reason why I didn't compete? So did it drive you to sort of want to be more competitive and to sort of almost showcase veganism?
Now that you've said it like that, I think you might have hit something there on the nail. I've never really thought about it like that, but yeah, in essence, you're right. And I think that working with some key organisations over the years that have been very supportive, so Veganuary, the Vegan Society, PET, etc. I carry all their logos on my GB kits. I do that all at my own cost. I don't take a penny off anyone to promote that. And I do that because I really want to promote the cause. And they are organisations quite dear to my heart. So I think in that way, because I'm photographed a lot in those kind of areas and I'm photographed with those logos on, I am like a walking advertisement, a walking billboard for veganism. And I think that obviously as time's gone on and I've got fitter and faster and stronger, whether that's been developing as a faster runner or developing as a faster cyclist or lifting more in the gym, then I will communicate that to the audience, particularly on social media, because I would say sort of not necessarily since the Game Changers came out, but before the Game Changers, there was probably a lot more that you had to prove, and still obviously to this day to a certain extent as well. So yeah, I think that you'd be probably clear and right in that observation that played a big part and still does it in communication.
I was going to ask you that about the and I suppose Game Changers is a huge part of it, but the sort of shift, if you've seen one, over the course of time, the shift in perceptions from the general public, if you like, and whether you've had more people either on the fringes of the sporting world or like I say, the general public on social media, kind of approaching you from a point of view of curiosity. How do I do this? I see that you're thriving and doing well in this space. Like, how are you doing it? All those kind of things. Have you seen that kind of shift from the early days through to today?
Massively. Unbelievably so. And it's actually something that makes me feel great, to be honest, because normally I don't like answering the phone, but after the Game Changers came out, my phone was literally red hot for
Really?
weeks. And the same thing happened when people were watching things like Cowspiracy, Seaspiracy, What the Health, etc. I've noticed there is a very strong and direct correlation between people watching those documentaries and it almost switching something on overnight. They are so powerful. So the great part of that is because people know me synonymously with being vegan, because I'm certainly not quiet about the fact. I do get a lot of calls about whether it's my daughter's thinking about going vegan, what are the best food she needs to be looking at as she goes through school, or even bodybuilders that have got in touch with me, bodybuilders that all their life have survived on red meat, that have turned around and said, fair play to you. You obviously know your stuff, you're doing well in your sport. You've got a good physique, we follow you, etc. Never thought I'd be saying this, but need some advice. And I'm just like, wow. And I've seen that from every age group as well. I've had people literally in their teens contact me. I've had people in their 70s contact me. And I welcome that because it's lovely knowing that there's new vegans of so many different varieties and different age groups and different personalities. And it's not all just one kind of area, because it's the only diet I know in the world that actually attracts people for multiple benefits. So some people want to do it because they love animals, which is the primary reason why I do it. Other people are learning more about kind of what it does to the internal organs and the positive effects on cholesterol and fat levels, etc. Reducing risks of heart attacks and things like that. So they do it from a health point of view, perhaps even to lose weight if that's their goal. And then you've got the environmentalists that love to do it because it lowers the carbon footprint, and because it's kinder to the earth, and it's been historically proven time and time again that it's the best thing you can do with regards to action on climate change. And I think that's quite unusual, that a diet can be so multi-angles and have so many different angles of attraction. So a long way to say and to answer the question, but the phone definitely was ringing off the hook literally as soon as those, particularly the Game Changers, came out. And I think that I'm not the only one that would be telling you that story as well, because there was a definite wave. You could feel it in the marketplace with regards to the plethora of products that were just appearing on every shelf every week, with regards to the amount of celebrities that were talking about it, the news coverage it was getting. It was just a fantastic time to be a vegan, witnessing that and seeing that the positivity that came out of it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and like you say, it has felt like almost an explosion of acceptance and excitement, actually, in lots of people as well, about sort of this discovery, which I know we've sort of all felt, these three angles and so on over the course of time. But it's amazing to see it hitting the sort of almost the mainstream culture. I don't want to say like the mainstream culture because we've got a long way to go, but it's certainly more prevalent.
Yeah,
I'm interested from that angle as well of the, I'm thinking, and obviously forgive my naivety in my question, but as a sports person who, I'd imagine that world is full of sponsorship and businesses kind of wanting to put their logos on, particularly like Team GB and these kind of things, and wanting to be associated with certain things. And you've, like you said, you've not been backward in coming forward about your ethics, and you've been very strong in your message and very clear. Has there ever been any, not that you would have necessarily bowed to it, but has there ever been any kind of sense of, Lisa, we'd rather you didn't say that, from a sponsorship point of view, or from any like athletic body or anything like that?
No, I mean, to be honest with you, I've not, touch wood, I've not had anything like that back, because I think that the way in which I approach things publicly, whether it's either on telly, radio, or social media, is that I'm not overly controversial. I'm quite facts driven, and I'm very, very positive, and I like to really get that positivity out there. I'm not trying to cause harm to anyone. I'm just trying to inform so people can make hopefully educated decisions. And that within itself has brought sacrifices to me, because I've had a variety of requests over the years to work with other businesses and brands and let them sponsor me, and I've specifically turned them down because they don't suit my ethics. And actually that crosses over into my business, Bravura Foods, as well. We get asked every single week to distribute new products and to market new products, but unless they tick all the boxes of being from a vegan company and not having any kind of association with animals in any way, shape or form, we will turn them down, even if that means walking away from large lucrative contracts, because I always, and my business partner Carl's always supported me in this, we always put our ethics in front of money, and I do that in sport as well. So that's why you won't really find me being an ambassador, despite having, there's at least 10 or 15 different ambassador requests I'll get on a daily basis on Instagram, but I wouldn't do it. I just prefer to really get the charities out there and to really do things that make me feel good and that are really about me and about my morals, rather than, trying to promote some kind of brand that I don't even necessarily believe in, but I'm just getting freebies at the end of the week. Yeah.
I can imagine that for that would have been a very difficult path to tread as a professional athlete, insofar as, like, for many, I'd imagine that those kind of sponsorships, those endorsements, are a proportion of their income, and their earning ability, and what is potentially a career with at the highest level has probably got a limited shelf life compared to most other people's careers, and so it must have been a very difficult path to tread, and I applaud the putting the ethics above it. Was that kind of the part of the reason why you thought, do you know what, I want to be in control of that destiny myself, and therefore I'm going to set up my own business? Yeah,
pretty much so. Again, it probably links more towards the fact of always being very goals orientated in life as well, and that's really driven me. And I think that my tutor at university once put the little seed in my mind and said, you'll definitely have your own business before you're 30. And that always stuck in my head, and I launched Bravura Foods when I was 29. I just about scraped through the door there. But yeah, I think that a lot of that came from the personal frustrations as well, of not having enough products out there on the market, and thinking to myself, well, someone needs to do this, someone needs to address it. And rather than just going out there and making a new business and doing whatever it may be, marketing or PR or sales, I actually want to take to market things that either don't exist or exist but need tweaking to make them more vegan friendly, etc. And that definitely, that personal kind of moral fibre has led really everything from day one with Bravura Foods in terms of what's happened. And you are right, it's very similar to the road that I've took in sports, and there's some direct parallel kind of similarities there with regards to knocking things back that many people in business would be like, what, are you crazy, why are you doing that? But obviously to me, as I say, I know some people don't agree with it, but I always do put the morals over the money.
For folks who don't know, it'd be really good to sort of just a sort of almost a overview of Bravura Foods. How would you describe it?
A vegan brand building company is probably the quickest way to describe it. So we've been going now for 10 years, and we are made up of a variety of products, really. Some of the products we distribute, so we hold UK distribution licenses for, the likes of Panda Licorice, Freedom Mallows, Vegan Bakery. And then some of the products we actually develop ourselves, like Leaf Life Peanut Hottie, Free From Fellows. all the products, whether we develop them ourselves or whether we import them from another country, they all come down the same distribution chain, and we then push them through the supermarket chains out into the wider retail marketplace. So we deal with the likes of Holland and Barrett, Sainsbury's, Waitrose. There's not really anyone in the grocery sector that we don't deal with, either from a high street retailer or supermarket point of view. And we've built that business, Carl and I, over many years, and sticking true to that vision of our actual vision, which is written on our website, is the future is vegan, and that's our company vision. And that has led every decision, really. And the funny thing about this, and the funny thing I always refer back to on this business story, is when I first started telling friends and family and business acquaintances that, we're setting up a business and it's going to be all vegan and we're going to do all vegan products, back in 2010, people were like, "Are you sure? I think that it's going to be, going to be a bit like gluten-free, not for everyone," which is obviously hilarious because they're the two of the biggest markets now. And a lot of people were doubting in the early stages. I'd say, if I had to put a percentage on it, 80% of people doubted that business setup. That includes family and friends. And even people that I came across in the buying sector, because we obviously have to pitch our products to the supermarkets, we were getting a lot in the early stages of, this is just too space age for us. It's too early doors, We don't think there's anyone other than you that's going to come through the doors and want to buy these products. So we'll just leave it for a few years and see what's what. And then obviously, fast forward now, 10 years later, these supermarkets actually come to us and use us for intel, market intel. They use us to help them range their planograms. We're category captains in Sainsbury's and Holland and Barrett. And the complete shift in that business model is unbelievable. It's going literally from one extreme to the other. And that's something that me and Carl will always be proud of, really, because we're quite old school in our approach. We've been here since before it was trendy. We're not one of these businesses that just wants to dip our toe in the water and slap vegan on the front of our products because we know we'll sell loads. We're actually a lot more than that. All of our product development comes from our heart and our head, and we're really personally involved in that. So it's something that, we are proud of in that respect, that we've gone that full circle and we are where we are today.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Like to have, back in 2010, like you say, obviously the vegan sort of convenience food, vegan products on shelves, was sort of, unheard of, really. It was something you had to really specialist food shops, etc. It wouldn't be in a Sainsbury's. And I can only imagine those meetings initially with buyers at places like Sainsbury's were almost like baffled by what you were
absolutely.
offering.
And you are right. I can never remember back in those 2010. There's no way I would have been able to go out and get a vegan sandwich anywhere, or even a vegan, even things like a vegan protein bar or a vegan cereal bar, whatever it is. Like you say, food on the go. And it's still got a long way to go, by the way. But food on the go back then was non-existent. And because a lot of our products are impulse snacking, it made it even more challenging in those days, because it wasn't like we were coming out with vegan burgers. We were coming out with gelatin-free gummy bears. We were coming out with gelatin-free licorice and, things like that. So people, didn't even have the awareness of what gelatin was. And then if you got into that awkward conversation of having to explain, it was just question marks, and bafflement. And, whereas today people understand and it's had a lot of press. So, we are where we are, which is a ridiculous 100% twist on where we were, obviously, 10 years ago.
It's incredible to see that journey. And there's so many now big businesses, like you say, getting involved. I fear to some extent there's an element of, like you said, sort of slapping the vegan label on things and so on. Although, you could argue, I suppose, the more the better and so on, as long as it is actually vegan and etc. As somebody who owns a business in that space, has that become almost a bit of a concern for you, that the biggest players in these fields are now in a space where they're thinking, hang on a minute, there's a little bit of cash there for us to have. We're going to sort of greenwash our way into that sector and almost, bully out some of the companies who are, you know, trying to make a positive change in a much more ethical fashion.
Yeah, it's a real concern. It's a real concern, but one of the things that we have is our heritage, and the fact that we've been doing this in the marketplace for 10 years, and we can track things back and tell the story and track the changes, and really to understand the vegan consumer, and being a vegan consumer myself and tracking those changes over the 10 years, it really puts a lot of strong armoury in your camp, because, you know, you can't just get that overnight and it can't be trained. That's something that you amass over many years. And interestingly, some of the big businesses that are out there actually do contact us for advice. So as an example, the year before last, Unilever, who I never thought about potentially even working with at this point in time, they got in touch with me and said, would you come in and would you educate our workforce? Would you come in and would you present to our commercial force in the head office, 50 people, and tell them the business journey and tell them what's going on in the vegan market, because we're all dinosaurs to it and we need to understand it. So I actually thought about it and I thought, well, what do I really want to do here? And at first I was probably a little bit hesitant, but that hesitancy, it kind of just, it went away, because very quickly I thought, hang on, I've got the opportunity here, the very rare and lucky opportunity to go into one of the world's biggest businesses, stand up in front of what was 95% male in the audience as well. You know, these are all sales controllers, sales directors, national account managers, and talk about the business journey and talk about veganism and how it's moved on over the years and what potentially they could be doing to move with it. And it was quite tough. One of my opening questions to the audience was, do we actually have any vegans in the audience? And one bloke put his hand up, and he was actually he'd been hired because he was vegan to be head of plant-based innovation. So that was kind of nice to see that, you know, obviously the wheels are starting to turn, but it was just a shame that only one person at the whole of the room could really relate. So I gave that talk, and, you know, I got some really good feedback from it and a lot of food for thought, lots of amazing feedback afterwards, right through to the top of the ranks, the management and directorship ranks at Unilever. And obviously I can only applaud them, because since then, look at all the amazing things they've been doing. They've got the vegan mayonnaise, they've got the vegan ice creams and all these kind of things. And yes, there is a certain part of me that thinks, God, if they carry on, what's going to happen to the likes of us? Will we be swallowed up in the future? But I like to think, and whether this is too ideal or not, I like to think that the more of us that are in the game, the faster we're going to get this movement literally on those bigger tracks. So I try and applaud in as many corners of life as possible anyone in any business of any size that's innovating in this sector, because I do feel it's just going to turn those wheels faster.
Yeah, I think that's incredible that you got an audience like that prepared to listen. That's amazing, and I can only imagine how sort of daunting that would have been as well. So more power to you for doing that. I don't know if I'd have fancied that myself.
I'm not sure if they actually, when I left, I'm not sure if they understood the type of person that I was, or if they did, they must have thought it was humorous, because the last few slides of my presentation were all pictures of my cat. Because I was trying to tell them that, you know, it comes from the heart, and, you know, animal loving is a very big important part of my life. And one of the pictures that I put up is I've got a Bengal cat called Yoshi, he's really popular on social media, and there was a picture of him in a school tie, and everybody was like, that was the best slide ever. So it was good to bring a bit of humour to it as well, because I think you can get very serious. And, you know, I could have stood there and said, you know, guys, you need to raise your game. This is awful. You need to get rid of this, get rid of that. But again, I took a very positive note over. These are the things that, you know, you're doing. These are the things I'd say do more of. These are what we've been doing, and that's what worked for us. And this is why you should do it. And these are the type of consumers you need to be speaking to. So, it was lighthearted and certainly good fun.
I have a feeling as well that these sort of the kind of the big businesses that are making like the vegan mayos and so on and so forth, certainly from my perspective, and I'm always conscious to say, well, I'm probably living in the sort of the vegan bubble, if you like, of kind of social media and stuff. You surround yourself with vegans all the time. You kind of can think the world's shifting faster than you think. But still, from the perspective of the people I speak to, I do think there's an element of, yes, some of those products they will consume. Yes, they'll buy into that to some degree, but most people seem to, who are deep into it, the community, seem to see those as transitional products. And actually they, like you said about the three kind of angles, once you go deeper and deeper, you get more intersectional, I think, and you get more ethically aware, and then you start wanting to buy from businesses that tick all of your personal boxes, and so I think those will actually win out in a way. I think almost it's those big businesses will actually prove a gateway to consumers to become more aware and actually choose small, choose local, choose businesses who are more ethically in tune, or at least probably that's me being overly optimistic. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you've articulated that really well, to be honest, and I do agree with you. And you only have to really look to see some of the challenger brands that are coming through and the success that those challenger brands are having. You know, that they're from almost cottage industry, artisan style products developed by husband and wife teams or brother and sister teams, and they're the kind of things now that the likes of Tesco and Asda are really starting to invest in, because you are right, people do move on from the big Nestle's, the Mars, and whatever else there is, and they do want to back products that they know a little bit more about. So either they may be locally produced or organic, or there's a small carbon footprint, or very good ingredients, provenance, recyclability, etc. There's so many facets to that, but I do think you are right, and certainly that's what we're seeing in the marketplace, because, you know, all these brands, we only ever used to exist in the likes of Whole Foods and Planet Organic and a couple of health food stores, and now you know, it's a beautiful situation. You can actually go into supermarkets, and they've almost got mini health food stores in store with the fixtures. And when you look at the likes of Asda, who's just gone through a recent range review, and I think they've got over 300 vegan products on shelf at the moment in their vegan section. That's a real mixed bag, and it covers everyone. That is what you've said, the transitional element, the people that are just coming out of flexitarianism, potentially trying to reduce their meat content and get more vegan products into the market, into their back pocket, etc. And then you've got right down the other end to very, very locally produced brands, and it's nice to see that spectrum coming right through. And you see it to a certain extent with Tesco and Sainsbury's too, but I think Asda have done a particularly good job of that, in that, you know, there is a lot of choice there across the board for every type of consumer that's either curious or that's been hardcore vegan for 15 years.
100%. If we sort of turn back to the sport just for a minute, because there's a question I definitely wanted to ask, and I'm sure lots of people are kind of fascinated to hear from somebody sort of competing at your level. Do you, and I appreciate you've been vegan for a fair while, so you've almost kind of, you know, I could say you probably, you know, you haven't got a benchmark from a personal perspective to say, well, this is what I was like when I was on meat. But have you kind of noticed any specific kind of performance benefits from being vegan?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, the one thing I can compare it to is the transition from vegetarian into veganism. And I remember when I did that, my energy levels went through the roof. I was just full of energy because I was very conscious. I was eating more leafy greens. I was eating more vegetables, all of which are bursting with, phytonutrients that keep us going during the day. So I noticed my energy levels went through the roof, and everyone always thought that I was completely jacked on caffeine. But I've actually not had caffeine since 2007.
Really? Wow.
Because I had something called supraventricular tachycardia, SVT for short, and I had a small heart ablation, which is basically where they go in at the top of the leg, they trace some wires up, and they just cut away a little part that isn't needed because there's like a short circuit with the electricity that goes around the heart. Long story short, what that means is that I can't really have any stimulants in my diet, which is a huge disadvantage to me versus all my competitors that line up next to me toe to toe, and they've had 15 espressos before they're going to do a 5K. I would love to be able to do that. I would love it, and I know I'd be a faster athlete for it, but I can't do that because obviously I've got the health issue that I wouldn't risk with it. But saying that, even though I stand toe-to-toe with those people and I'm fueled by water and, kind of BCAAs or whatever it is that I use, I still achieve good times. So going back to when I was vegetarian, the transition of vegetarian to veganism, the three things I would say were the big things that I noticed that made massive, massive performance gains come to reality for me would be more energy, better sleep, and overall better digestive tract kind of performance. Now, 70% of our immune system is controlled by the gut. It comes from the gut. So if you're an athlete, gut health is very, very important for you. If you can't get that in control and you've got a bad digestive system, two things are going to happen. One, you're going to be tired because you're just going to be struggling, particularly when you go to bed, because when you go to bed, you might be sleeping, but your digestive tract isn't sleeping. It's having to work really hard to process all the meats. So you're going to be tired anyway during the day. And two, you're going to feel sluggish. And then you're going to be more open and susceptible to picking up just generally coughs and colds because you're going to have a lower immune system. So that's something that I noticed, that, I wasn't getting coughs and colds. I was getting a lot of energy. My skin health really turned a corner. I've always had adult acne, and moving away from dairy did help that. I'm still not completely through the woods, but it certainly has helped. And then if we look at the times when I was vegetarian and going back to the times that I was doing were around about 41, 42 minutes for my 10K. Fast forward to today, and I'm 38:43 for my 10K and 18:39 for my 5K, which used to be about 20 minutes when I was vegetarian. Now, self-confessed, some of that has come from hard work and dedication to the cause, because I train, 6 days a week, and 3 of those days are double days. But a lot of it has come from much clearer understanding of dietary needs, and eating the right foods and eating enough of the right foods to be able to fuel those performances. You can't get on the watt bike for 20 miles and try and bang that out in 50 minutes if you've not had adequate food. It would be impossible. You'd be flagging after mile 2 or 3. Same things. I couldn't go out and do even a 10-mile recovery run at the weekend through the dunes and across Formby Beach where I live if it didn't have the right nutritional kind of balance. And part to that really is related to my knowledge that I've amassed over the years, and I'm actually a qualified vegan nutritionist now as well, which I did a diploma in a few years ago. So that helps, along with obviously writing the book Gone in 60 Minutes. Just really, I'm a big believer on always learning. Knowledge is power. I'm always up for learning new things. I don't think that you should ever be complacent. I try new things all the time. 1 minute it might be looking at, what chia seeds can do to performance versus beetroot and all these different things. I actually enjoy it. It's a real learning process for me. And, my kitchen can sometimes look like a laboratory because of it. But I love it because I love learning about, well, did it make me feel good? If it didn't, I'm not going to have it in the diet as much, etc. Because, I try to eat functionally as much as I can throughout the week, Monday to Friday, and then relax it a little bit of a weekend and just go with what my body requires.
Yeah. I want to get onto the book, and I'm fascinated by how on earth you've had time to write a book. with everything that you do, but I'd love to hear a little bit about the inspiration for it. What's the book about, and like I say, any tips for time management by the sounds of it as well.
Absolutely. So this, actually, I've just got one to hand here. They're always on the end of my desk. I use these as business cards now. So this is the book, and it's called Gone in 60 Minutes. And it's basically a book that has been titled because it can be read within 1 hour. So one of the things that I noticed, particularly in the fitness marketplace years ago when I wrote this book back in, I think it was 2008, was that there's so many big books out there. They're like Bibles that you've got to read about. Well, what's the right supplements to take, and what should I be doing with my diet, and what should I do with workouts, and how do I keep motivated? And I was coming across this all the time, and I was reading journals and reading magazines and seeing what they recommended. And every book I was ordering, they were like that coming through the post. And I was like, it's enough to put anyone off. And I'm a nerd, and it was nearly putting me off. So I decided there was a definite gap in the market to put everything in a bite-sized health and fitness saviour that can be read, literally on the train to work, on a plane journey, whatever, when you've got an hour spare. And it just literally is split into 4 very easy to understand bite-sized areas. And that is, the first one is workout. So there's a perpetual training calendar in there. And that perpetual training calendar you can use throughout the year. And it's really aimed at people that potentially have hit stagnation and a bit of a plateau with regards to what they're doing in the gym, or they're finding that they're not getting anything with regards to physique gains. They might be aesthetically driven and they want to lose weight, etc. So the workouts are really geared. It's a mixture of kind of things to build power, things to build strength, and things to burn fat. And then the second part of the book is about diet. Now, I'm not overly preachy in the diet section. I just deliver some facts on some of the best athletes around the world that are following a vegan diet, and I give some examples of the best foodstuffs to have in carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. I don't get too caught up on that because, again, it's very personal with regards to dietary choice. And then we move on to supplements and give the reader an idea on some of the best supplements that are out there and some of the supplements that I've used over the years. And then the book finishes off in its final chapter with state of mind, which is all really about how to bring it together, how to stay motivated, things like, you don't necessarily have to weigh yourself. You can just look in the mirror instead and see how it makes you feel, and speak to your own kind of mental health side of things, and speak to your inside kind of you to make sure that you're happy, rather than just thinking, it's a number on a scale. Changing your music regularly, keeping things fresh, keeping things quite unique will always help with regards to kind of keeping on that kind of boat in the long term. So it's not aimed at people that know everything about fitness. It's aimed more at people that really just want to try something new. I've got some statistics in there as well. Over the years, I transitioned from being a cardio bunny into a cardio and weights athlete, and I've documented the differences that actually made to my body fat, which was about a 10% body fat loss. It was unbelievable, just by moving across into weights and things like that. So I do kind of touch upon that because I know that there's a lot of people out there that measure things like that and that are very motivated by that. So it is research backed, and everything in there is clearly referenced, and it's just a really easy, handy guide. Most of the readers that have written to me about the book and have got in contact with me have said, it's one of those things, I always have it in my gym bag, and when I don't know what to do, I dabble into it, and I'll just do the fat blitz circuit, or I'll do the chest circuit that you've got in there, or I'll do something like that. So it's very pro weight, because I think that there's still a lot of people out there, particularly females, that are scared about picking up weights and bulking up, and it's also unusual for me. It's quite controversial because I have got some findings in there over why things are better for you and why things may not be as good as what they seem. So there's some little nuggets of information that you can get in there that, would be probably deemed controversial, but again, research backed, and certainly lots of examples of people transitioning and doing those things and getting good results from it.
Without ruining too much, can you give us one of those? I'm fascinated by the controversial bits.
Well, one of the things is basically one of the things I've got in there is the fact that, you can have the best fitness equipment in the world, you can have the best personal trainer in the world, but if you've got stress in your life, you will be struggling to really achieve the best, and you'll be struggling. This is particularly relevant for any businessmen that are listening to this. Businessmen tend to have, and women, businesswomen as well, high levels of cortisol. Now, cortisol is a stress hormone. If your stress hormone is up here and it's too high, it's just impossible for you to lose weight. And a lot of people think it's okay, I can still be a stressed Eric because I've got the latest Peloton or this, that and the other. And then they come to me 6 months later and say, but I've been doing Peloton every day and I don't understand what's going on. I say, but how's work going? Oh, it's a nightmare. It's dead stressful. I'm not sleeping. And well, there's your kind of understanding of why things aren't happening for you. And it's at that point I actually suggest some very good and research-backed specific Chinese herbs that you can actually take to dissolve your cortisol. That I'm amazed they're not in the press every day and people aren't parading them up and down the street, because Chinese herbs are a wonderful area and something that I don't think is widely accepted and understood with the knowledge that it deserves. So that would be one example really of one of the nuggets of knowledge. And if I was going to pinpoint that even further, I would say if anyone's listening to this who struggles with stress and knows that that's a sticking point because they're overeating or they're just not being able to lose weight because they can't fit workouts in, to try and readdress that balance, you could go on a really good herb called Ashwagandha. And that is really good. And another good one, particularly if you've got sort of elements of anger and frustration in your life, is called Holy Basil. And they're both widely available at health food stores nationwide. I take them both religiously every day because I am I'm in a stressful business environment. I'm literally driven by deadlines. If you imagine my day is broken down into, I have to fit work in there, I have to fit fitness in there. My poor family and friends, they never really get to see me. And it's the dregs of what's really available in the weekends, really. I do take them daily, and I'm a big proponent of them. I think they're fantastic herbs.
That's when you put it like that, it's actually, I think it's perfectly logical actually that sort of almost that a stressed person, stressed body is going to almost, I suppose, defend itself, make sure that it's protecting itself, almost saying, well, we don't want to lose weight because, we're under stress.
Yeah.
But I suppose that our ancient stresses that the body's sort of evolved to deal with were literal, fear to life and lack of food and so on. And now we're stressed by, social media and our businesses and all these kind of things. So yeah, it's perfectly logical actually when you say it. I'm not just not really thought about it before.
Yeah, no, it's and that's one of the areas that I get a lot of feedback from people on social media because the book's it's primarily available on Amazon, and I get a couple of messages on there as well. But there are some people that it's really helped, just some nuggets of information that you'd have to search through hundreds of books to find, but taking the best of the information out there and just delivering it in an easy to understand format. Because the other thing that I've always found as well is that a lot of fitness books and fitness journals, they can be full of jargon and people can just be put off by it. And it's a real barrier to understanding and progression. So, mine is a no-nonsense guide, and it's just an easy to understand book. And, I've had people right from the top of the chain of kind of fitness pro bikini athletes reading it to people that are just trying to get the mum and dad off the couch. And that's a really nice range as well, that people have taken different things from the book and applied them to their day-to-day workouts.
I love the concept as well of the 60-minute read. You're so right. Like I've fallen foul of that many times, buying the sort of weighty tome, thinking this will be the answer. And it's just impenetrable after the first chapter. You just don't get anywhere near it. Yeah. So I love that concept. I think it's fabulous. Super, Lisa. It's been awesome chatting with you. But I think time is against us, and I'd love to let some folks know whereabouts they can buy the book, B, find out a little bit more about Bravura Foods, and then C, find out a little bit more about you.
Yeah, sure.
Where would they go?
So the book's available on Amazon. You just have to search Gone in 60 Minutes and it'll come up. And Bravura Foods has its own website, www.bravurafoods.com. And it's also on Instagram, which you can just search for under Bravura Foods. And then I'm on Instagram and Twitter. Now on Twitter, because Twitter really supports the book, I'm under the handle of @GoneIn60Minutes. And on Instagram, under the handle of just @Lisa_Gawthorne. I've got quite an unusual second name, so if you put Gawthorne into either Twitter or Instagram, it'll probably bring up only one of us, which is fairly easy. There's not many of you. It's fairly easy to do.
Awesome. Lisa, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.